They thought she would take it on the chin. Smile for the cameras. Stay patient. Wait her turn. They thought Caitlin Clark would be grateful just to be in the building, content to sit at the end of the bench, learn from the legends, and bide her time like every rookie before her. But something shifted. And now, the narrative is starting to crack. Reports are circulating that the WNBA's biggest rising star may have drawn a hard line in the sand, allegedly telling insiders she's done with Team USA. Done waiting. Done being overlooked. And if even part of it is true, this isn't just a story about a roster decision anymore. It's about consequences. What began as a selection controversy has now grown into something much bigger. When the Team USA roster was announced for Paris, one name dominated headlines, broke ticket sales, and drove record TV ratings, yet was ultimately left off the final squad. The explanation? Experience. Chemistry. Paying dues. But to many watching, that explanation never really landed. Because while fans were filling arenas to see her logo range threes and no-look passes, the message being sent off the court felt very different. Not yet. Not here. Not one of us. And whether intentional or not, that decision set off a chain reaction. Now the conversation has shifted, from whether she deserved to be there, to whether she even wants to be. If these rumors prove true, the sport may be facing something unprecedented, its most marketable global star potentially stepping away from its biggest international stage before she ever truly steps onto it. And just like that, what was once seen as waiting her turn, is starting to look a lot more like walking away.
WNBA Finals, and so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments, and so all I'll say is just, it's obviously...
But the snub was only the beginning. If being left off the roster felt like a cold shoulder, what unfolded once the season began felt like something else entirely. From opening tip, the intensity around Caitlin Clark didn't ease in, it escalated. There were hard fouls. Physical contact that pushed the limits. The blindside bumps. The off-ball grabs. The constant pressure every time she touched the ball. One moment that went viral showed a heavy collision with Chindi Carter, sending Clark to the floor before she even had a chance to fully engage in the play. And that clip became a symbol of a much bigger conversation happening across the league. Was this just tough basketball? Or something more? Because as the contact continued, so did the debate. Screens got harder. Defenders got more aggressive. Every possession felt like it came with extra weight. But for many fans, the bigger issue wasn't only what was happening on the court, it was what wasn't happening off it. The silence from the league office. There were no immediate statements. Few quick escalations. Limited disciplinary action in real time. And by the time fouls were upgraded or reviewed, the conversation had already moved far beyond basketball. To supporters, it felt like the league was slow to protect its brightest new star on the biggest stage. And as frustration grew, so did the chaos around the narrative, until the situation reached a breaking point. That's when Commissioner Cathy Engelbert stepped in. And instead of calming things down, her comments only added fuel to an already raging fire. In a recent CNBC interview that quickly turned into a public relations disaster, Commissioner Cathy Engelbert attempted to downplay the growing criticism surrounding Caitlin Clark by comparing the situation to the Magic Johnson-Larry Bird rivalry of the 1980s. On the surface, it was framed as history repeating itself, great competition, heightened attention, and a rising tide that lifts the league. She spoke about valuation, marketing growth, and the business upside of the league's new spotlight, painting the moment as an opportunity rather than a problem. But what was missing in her comments was just as important as what was included. There was no clear acknowledgement of the rising hostility Clark has faced. No direct condemnation of the toxic fan behavior. No meaningful address of the concerns around safety, targeting, or the emotional toll on players. And that omission sparked immediate backlash. To critics, the message felt dangerously dismissive, as if the tension, the controversy, and even the hostility surrounding Clark were being reframed as just another marketing asset to be monetized. Instead of easing concerns, the comparison to a legendary rivalry only intensified them, raising questions about whether the league fully understood the moment it was navigating. Because to many observers, it no longer felt like a conversation about basketball. The WNBA Players Association, typically aligned with the league's broader growth message, was eventually forced to respond. They issued a statement distancing themselves from Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's remarks, emphasizing what many felt had been missing from the conversation: that there is no place for hate, hostility, or targeted abuse in the sport. Players like Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier also stepped forward, saying publicly what the league office had not said clearly enough: that the line had to be drawn when it came to player safety and respect. But for Caitlin Clark, by that point, the damage may have already been done. Because imagine the perspective: a player driving unprecedented ratings, selling out arenas, boosting merchandise sales, and helping usher in charter flights and new revenue streams across the league, only to hear the league's top leadership describe the surrounding controversy as part of a great business moment. That disconnect struck a nerve. And it's part of why the rumors of frustration, and even withdrawal, began to spread. But the situation doesn't exist in isolation. There's also the long-standing tension beneath the surface: the perception of an established inner circle within Team USA, built on years of continuity, chemistry, and shared history. For months, whispers circulated that some veterans were hesitant about integrating a new spotlight player into a tightly bonded group heading into Paris. Not just because of fit, but because of attention. Even past comments from legends like Diana Taurasi, who once warned that reality is coming, were recirculated in a new light as Clark continued to break records and redefine expectations in her rookie season. To supporters of Clark, her Olympic omission wasn't just a basketball decision, it was a symbolic one. A message about control, legacy, and who gets to define the future of the sport. Team USA still secured gold, but the celebration came with a shadow: a widening gap between the league's established power structure and the new generation of fans rallying behind its biggest star. According to emerging speculation and unverified insider whispers, Caitlin Clark isn't simply reacting to being left off the Olympic roster. She may be repositioning herself entirely. Rather than dwelling on the disappointment of missing Paris, the narrative suggests she is beginning to take control of her own trajectory and brand direction. After what sources describe as a combination of Olympic omission, on-court physicality, and a lack of clear institutional support, Clark is allegedly shifting her focus away from the traditional pathways tied to the national program. If true, it represents a significant power shift. Because Clark understands her value. She understands the numbers, ratings, ticket sales, merchandise spikes, and the attention she brings wherever she plays. And that has fueled a growing belief that she is no longer dependent on the system in the way many athletes before her were. The emerging rumor is that she may be signaling reluctance toward future national team participation under the current environment, should nothing change. If even partially accurate, the implications are massive. We are no longer talking about a roster decision or short-term controversy. We are talking about the possibility of the sport's most influential new star stepping back from its highest stage of international representation. That would flip the entire dynamic on its head. For years, the assumption has been that the Olympic dream is the ultimate destination, an honor athletes work toward and rarely turn away from. But Clark's rise has challenged that assumption. She has become a commercial and cultural engine in her own right, capable of moving viewership and revenue at unprecedented levels. And if she were to disengage from the national team pipeline, the impact would be felt far beyond basketball. It would affect marketing plans, long-term Olympic narratives, and the build-up toward Los Angeles 2028. In that scenario, the league and its leadership would face an uncomfortable reality. The future they expected to showcase may not automatically include the sport's biggest draw. And suddenly, the control shifts, not to the institutions, but to the player they thought they could wait out. Without Caitlin Clark, the concern is no longer just competitive, it's commercial. The league is now trying to sustain a product that its newest and largest audience may not follow in the same way without its biggest draw. And the numbers tell a striking story. Before Clark entered the league, the WNBA faced ongoing challenges with visibility, attendance consistency, and national broadcast reach. But since her arrival, attendance has surged league-wide, television ratings have climbed dramatically, and the league secured a landmark media rights deal valued at over $2 billion. That revenue has had a ripple effect, supporting higher salaries, improved travel conditions, and expanded investment across the league. And that's where the irony becomes impossible to ignore. The same ecosystem that now benefits from her popularity is also the one where she has often been framed as an outsider rather than the central driver of growth. To supporters, that contradiction is at the heart of the tension. The league is simultaneously elevated by her presence while struggling to fully embrace the scale of her impact. If Clark were to shift her focus exclusively to her professional team and step back from international commitments, it would force a difficult recalibration, one where Team USA would have to lean on established veterans who, while accomplished, do not generate the same level of global attention or audience expansion. But to understand why speculation around her long-term participation has intensified, many point back to the broader communication breakdown between leadership and public sentiment. When Commissioner Kathy Engelbert was asked about the growing hostility and troubling online discourse surrounding Clark, including concerns about racism, misogyny, and targeted harassment, her response shifted toward a broader business framing. She referenced historical NBA rivalries from the 1980s, comparing the intensity to legendary matchups defined by competition and spectacle. But for critics, that comparison missed a crucial distinction. Because while past rivalries were physical and competitive, the current environment carries a different layer of digital amplification, toxicity, and personal targeting that extends far beyond the court. And by framing the moment primarily through a business and entertainment lens, the league opened itself up to criticism that it was normalizing or downplaying the seriousness of what players were experiencing. To many observers, the message, intentional or not, felt unsettlingly close to this. For a young player like Caitlin Clark, who has remained composed, professional, and largely silent through the noise, the situation may have felt like a breaking point. To supporters, it looked less like criticism and more like contradiction, a league benefiting enormously from her rise, yet struggling to fully embrace her as its centerpiece. That perception only intensified after the Olympic roster decision. The official explanation centered on chemistry, experience, and the difficulty of integrating a high-usage, fast-paced guard into a veteran system on short notice. But that argument was immediately challenged by what fans had already seen. In the WNBA All-Star setting, where Clark shared the floor with elite players against Team USA, the result was anything but a mismatch. The pace was faster, the offense more fluid, and the execution noticeably sharper. Clark created shots, facilitated offense, and elevated the tempo almost instantly. To many observers, it undermined the idea that basketball fit was the real issue. Instead, it reframed the conversation around comfort, hierarchy, and control. Beyond that, criticism has also focused on how narratives around Clark have been shaped off the court. Former players and media voices, including figures like Sheryl Swoopes, have at times questioned or downplayed aspects of her achievements, fueling debate among fans about fairness, bias, and generational divide. The league's continued platforming of such commentary has only added to the perception among some fans that the discourse around Clark is inconsistent and, at times, dismissive of her impact. Meanwhile, the lack of official intervention during periods of heightened online hostility and controversy has left a vacuum that fans have filled with speculation. In most professional sports, organizations move quickly to clarify, de-escalate, or protect their most visible stars. In this case, the silence has often been interpreted as ambiguity, or worse, indifference. And that ambiguity has fueled rumors about Clark's long-term relationship with Team USA. Ordinarily, situations like this are addressed quickly through agent statements or organizational messaging. But the absence of clear public clarification has only intensified speculation about what is being discussed privately. At the same time, Clark's workload and physical toll have become part of the broader conversation. She has faced heavy defensive pressure, constant attention, and a demanding schedule, yet continues to perform at a high level while leading her team deep into the season. It has reinforced her image as both durable and central to the league's current momentum. But it has also raised a larger question. What happens when the league's biggest draw feels unsupported by the system surrounding her? That tension has split the fan base. One side sees Clark as the face of a new era, driving unprecedented growth, attention, and opportunity. The other believes the league's foundation was already strong and that the current spotlight is being overstated or misattributed. For the league office, the challenge should have been unification. Instead, the messaging has often widened the divide. That matters, because fan loyalty in this new era is increasingly personal. If Clark were to step away from Team USA commitments, a portion of that audience may follow her attention elsewhere rather than automatically transferring allegiance to the national program. Looking ahead to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, the stakes become even clearer. The event is expected to be a defining moment for women's basketball globally, but its cultural reach will depend heavily on star power, not just competition. Without its most recognizable figure, the product risks becoming less of a mainstream spectacle and more of a traditional tournament. Internally, the league is also navigating collective bargaining discussions, with players seeking expanded revenue share, improved conditions, and continued growth in compensation. Much of that optimism is tied to the league's recent financial surge. But that surge is itself closely linked to Clark's arrival. If her relationship with the league or national program were to deteriorate further, it would introduce uncertainty into projections that depend heavily on sustained audience expansion. There is also a deeper emotional layer to this story. Clark has long expressed admiration for Team USA and the players who came before her. Like many elite athletes, representing her country was once the pinnacle of her ambition. That is what makes the current tension feel so significant to her supporters, not just as a professional dispute, but as a personal disconnect from a dream she once openly valued. From that perspective, stepping back wouldn't necessarily be about protest, it could be about preservation. Preserving her body, her brand, and her long-term career trajectory. As for the future, much now depends on how leadership responds. A reset in communication, clearer protection of players, and a more unified public stance could still repair much of the tension. But continued silence or misalignment will likely deepen the divide. Because at this point, Caitlin Clark is no longer just a rookie adjusting to the league. She is a central economic force in the sport, one whose presence influences ratings, revenue, and global attention. And that reality has permanently changed the balance of power. The question now is no longer whether she fits into the system,